Well, here's one about something in more modern history than I usually like to delve into because it starts to get too personal. But I was asked on a video that I did 4.5, 5 years ago, whenever people were getting on my videos and ranting about all the things that they had heard before and bullshit, because I was already debunking a lot of it. And some Afrocentrics started jumping in and chiming about kind of things and stuff. And I made a few videos about the reality of the slave trade and how that all went down, and that the Irish were the first slaves in America, and the blacks that actually even came to America in 1619 were a mistake, and they weren't going to take the people after they got finally to the Americas and go on another trip all the way to South America to try to take the few slaves that they had there even to it, or that 92% or more of the African diaspora that came out of the slave trade, where they captured and sold their own people off, went to South America. Only a small fraction, some 5 to 6%, came to the North American continent, and then the other were scattered a little bit, an extreme small percentage. But he got on and didn't want to debate or even challenge anything that I said, including the Underground Railroad was created by Caucasians and all kinds of stuff. He actually put a statement in there that Thomas Jefferson raped his concubine, slave black woman, and that I should try to debunk that or make a video not lying about it. So I did kind of what anybody would normally do whenever they try to do some research, perhaps in a topic they're not as well versed as other people. A lot of people don't know it, that researchers are standing on the backs of some people that are very deep in certain rabbit holes, and if they want to know that, they need to consult those people that have gone down those rabbit holes. Usually in a short period of time you can tell whether or not they're actually trying to politicize something or give an apologetics type look at it and so on, because quite often you can find somebody else that'll actually contradict this and so on. You'll find that one of them will be real weak too and not make a lot of references, and the other people that are proving the other people wrong might end up making a whole lot of references that can be proven. It's kind of a mode here. You'll see it in E7's work whenever she does these debunking. You'll see it in mine too, where I'll just stop them after they say something stupid and I go, no, and here's the proof, and go on from there. Well, so what I did was I basically looked up Thomas Jefferson did not have slave children. And second or third from the top was this guy here, which I'd like for you to go and look at the video at. It's 40 minutes long. But if I was to pick it apart and interject like I do so on, this thing would be three-hour videos at least long, and I don't need to go there because this guy goes into depth enough and proves himself. In fact, a couple of times I thought, well, that might be worth it or whatever. Later on, he goes back into it, and then I'm like, okay, I have almost nothing left. I have a couple of statements I could interject into this whole thing. I don't think those statements are a be-all, end-all, or make everything different, like all of a sudden I'm going to pull out a bunch of statues of blue-eyed Egyptians and so on. This is actually for Thomas Jefferson of the time, and there is a whole lot more knowledge towards this point than there ever is towards most of the things that I look up. So I want you, after this, when I get through, to look up Leather Apron Club. Thomas Jefferson did not have children with slaves, and you'll actually see him go through it quite a bit. I'm actually at about 80% done here when I'm showing you this picture. I will show a couple of other representations shortly, but in that fact, he has totally destroyed it, but he also shows you where it came from, people's motivations for such, and things on that line. There's another video, but I came back to this one because this is the researcher that puts it all together for you, and that's the one I'd rather you see than some other guy, which is looked at a little more motivational, racist, whatever you want to try to do about it. But he ends up telling you that whenever people go to Montecello, there's this weird thing where the white people probably don't know that this book that we're looking at right now is set up on a pedestal in Montecello for people to look at. But blacks, quite often when they come there, will ask for where this comes from. And he said always, but I would like to take that with a grain of salt and say mostly or quite a bit, noticeably, or whatever you want to try to put to it, as opposed to a blanket of all. That they know about this, and whenever they see it, they flock onto this like bees on a flower. And then they'll spend the rest of their day talking about it, sometimes, or bringing it up. And that there have been quite a few instances where people ask where this is. When they see it, they read it out, and then they start trying to throw a fit, and they have to be escorted off the property. Let's look into what this says when you walk up to this book, which just shows the dinner bell that's over here and some other things, but they've got this one thing stone right here, and it tells you Sally Hemings, 1773 to 1835, is one of the most famous African American women in U.S. history. What would make her famous? Well, for more than 200 years, her name has been linked to Thomas Jefferson as his concubine, obscuring the facts of her life and her identity. While sexual encounters between the masters and slaves were common, this one was exploited by Jefferson's political enemies to discredit him. Actually showing you the truth right there, but blacks, whenever they read over that, they're like so settled on the idea that they've already been told all their life and pretty much trained to act like that, they won't even read that statement and get its truth out of it, because here she goes, Sally Hemings' life. Oh boy, let me read what happened. Let me confirm and get mad. Like countless enslaved women, Sally Hemings bore children fathered by her owner, they say. Female slaves had no legal right to refuse unwanted sexual advances. Sally Hemings was the child of an enslaved woman and her owner, as were 5 of her siblings. 2 of her sisters bore children fathered by white men, but not Jefferson. Mixed race children were present at Montecello. So does that mean it's from Jefferson? No, because they were getting mixed race slaves, by the way. In fact, this Sally Hemings has been tracked down to where they say that she might have been a quarter black. In fact, there's a lot of things that this guy will show you, Leather Apron Club, where they say that she had nice hair, that she looked white, you know, kind of like the wife of the red-headed kid from the England Noble Society that just really wants to be left alone, as he keeps going on shows not to be left alone. You ever see South Park make fun of that? That's hilarious. But that girl there, you would say, well, if she has any black in her, da-da-da, and everything, well, she's about a quarter. So, even less than that. But they tell you that mixed race children were in Montecello, in the surrounding country. Oh, so does he get around? No, they're letting you know that this was happening. In fact, they say in the surrounding country, across Virginia and throughout the United States. Of course, at that moment, blacks are trying to pin everything on Jefferson, and he did it all, as opposed to the fact that whenever he even got this girl, she was already a mulatto kid. They even tell you, regardless of their white paternity, children born to enslaved women inherit their mother status as slaves. Unlike countless enslaved women, Sally Hemings was able to negotiate with her owner. In Paris, where she was with them, let me get closer on this. Oh, not going to be able to. This is the guy doing the debunking of the story of it, though. Let me try to catch it. Oh, God. Let me catch it here. Unlike countless enslaved women, Sally Hemings was able to negotiate with her owner in Paris, where she was actually the nanny over her kid, over his kid, over Jefferson's white kid. But she was only like 14 at the time. And there are papers that this guy will show you where they're concerned about it, and even his wife and everything concerned about it, because she's not really nanny. She's a 14-year-old kid, described as a child still. But this one was exploited Jefferson's political enemies to discredit them. I don't know if you've ever heard the story that John Adams and him died on the same day and everything, and that one was asking about the other and thought they went first, but they didn't even know that he was already somebody was already on their way, headed towards Jefferson to tell him that Adams had passed away, and vice versa. So if you look at this guy here in this leather apron club and go to this video, you'll find that they'll show that whenever they did this paternity test on these people that are making these claims, that quite often they're shown to have no connection. Just like whenever blacks will end up trying to take something like the fact that they have that good hair now and claim that they are part Indian, and then when they do a genetics test on them, they're nowhere anyway part Indian, and that must be some other admix. Wait, the genetics show X, as opposed to the idea. Even Gates, who's famous about going into people's life and heritage and so on like that, took a group of blacks, which contained Morgan Freeman and all kinds of blacks, trying to claim that they were products of Indians because they had an aunt that had good hair or something along that line, and were proven that they didn't have any heritage like that. I don't know if you're aware, but they quite often claimed they were the Amerindians, along with a lot of other claims, which just leave them looking pathetic trying to make all these claims, as opposed to claiming their pre-Neolithic heritage as a people living in a jungle Congo area, far West Africa, not knowing Egypt existed, or even North Africa, the Mediterranean, or anything else in the world. And if they found some that got enslaved and taken away, that still doesn't mean the people in West Sub-Saharan Africa even knew that existed. So those claims get looked at pretty strange. Let's see if I can show you a couple more. This lady here's wrote a book, and it's racist and full of lies, but she would like to believe the lies. And the one that he shows you here is that even in her book, her name is Annette Gordon Reed, symbolically it's tremendously important for people as a way of inclusion, regardless if it has any truth or not. Nathan Huggins said that the Sally Hemings story was a way of establishing black people's birthright to America somehow. That the founding fathers raped a black woman. Do you follow me? And therefore they have some birthright to America, because they know they don't have a birthright to America if they were brought here on other pretenses. And it's crazy where we were at that point there versus where we are now, and all the bullshit and pandering going on and everything. But this was supposed to give them a birthright, as opposed to being just a slave somehow, that they were a slave that was raped. And that, you're like, well, you wouldn't want to have that as an origin story, but it's the best thing they got going. She goes on to say that if you look at the flip side of it, rejecting the story is part of the rejection of black people's birthright and claims to America. Yeah, they're always trying to pretend that if you don't agree with them, then that's racist. And she's also claiming here that they have somehow a birthright towards America. I can't see that idea. But once you get into this guy's full video, you'll find out you're trying to claim a quarter mulatto at best, and the genetics said they were inconclusive. In fact, literally ran down to somebody that was his nephew. They used to hang around with the black people a lot, that they said was slow in the head and this, that, and the other. And so that would seemingly look like Jefferson's DNA, but not. And then whenever they tried to check that, they said it came back inconclusive. Yet he'll show you that on the Oprah Winfrey show, after that point, she literally says word for word what that billboard thing that we were looking at a minute ago, or the book that's opened up there, tries to say, as opposed to the reality of it, because they would like to promote that, as opposed to the fact that whenever they found this out, it looks like it might have been his slow-headed nephew here that might be the implication, and it never was Jefferson. But Jefferson's slow-witted nephew doesn't sound that good to them, especially when they're trying to claim a birthright somehow that is in existence. So that's crazy. But she goes on and actually gets to the point of saying a few other things, like his mother, Madison Hemings, Sally Hemings, has come to be seen as a metaphor for the condition of blacks in American society. That they would like to pick out a lie and point that out and say it's a metaphor for everything that really happened, as opposed to the reality of how this all happened, because it gets quite pathetic whenever you show that. And of course, not knowing any of that, their old claims of we was Egyptians, we was this, we were that, are so self-exposing in a modern day, along with, of course, the new Cleopatra debacle that's been put out. But this is by this Annette Gordon-Reed lady here, and so it shows you that they're trying to make a metaphor out of it, even though it's not true at all. And she even went on to say that some people come here to Monticello and they say, I didn't come here to a slave plantation to hear about slavery. There's nothing to do but keep pushing back, she says. What's odd is that other guy said, maybe not even knowing what she had said here, or perhaps it's a reference to it, that a lot of blacks come there because they want to see this slave plantation, and they want to believe that we was humped into a mulatto state by somebody who founded America. Therefore, if that is in effect, then we was, and try to make other claims off of it. Which is sad in itself. It really is. But trying to have these narratives here and keep pushing back. Well, she's already saying a lie and then tells you to keep pushing back. Imagine if you find out it's all a lie, but she wants you to keep pushing back with a lie. As if somebody's pushing something, as opposed to just revealing that no, and you need to quit saying this. Every single attempt like this makes you look pathetic. But they can't quit. In fact, on that Oprah Winfrey show, they take one of the girls and they say, well, you've been telling everybody in your family that you come from Jefferson somehow for generations, but DNA says, no, you never even knew Monticello existed. And then the girl turns around and says she's just going to keep saying it because they knew it before. Almost like whenever that black lady said that Cleopatra's black, no matter what you read in school, and that seems to have been the impetus to end up making Cleopatra and even Ptolemy and all of the Egyptians look black, because they have this fanciful tale that they were the Egyptians and not themselves, which is again so self-exposing, to try to point at someone else and go, we weren't us, we were, or that you had anything to do with Egypt whatsoever, when Nubians weren't even allowed by decrees. But that's enough about that one. We're trying to talk about Jefferson. You see, there's a lot of people that have a Jefferson name, and some of those they tracked back and they made up that name and put Jefferson on themselves after the fact. Your name used to be Williamson, but you didn't want to have that, so you started naming your kids Jefferson. And this is about the time that all this political lie came out, so it looks like you were trying to name yourself off of that. Blacks didn't really have a secondary or third surname situation going on. And it's funny that they act like, well, we didn't know what her name was. No, you knew what your name was. You want all this Toby idea where they pretended to give you another name and you have to go by that and whip it out of you and all these things. Whenever in reality, blacks, whenever they were totally set free, quite often took that master's name as a sign of reverence to the guy because he hooked your ass all up and learnt me and taught me things. But they don't want that narrative. They want to act like, well, we just learned all this stuff we know now, not from being constantly exposed around white people and going through their schools that teach all of this. I'm woke now. Have you heard that one? So this 1619 Project thing came out, and he talked crap about that too, and I did a video about it too, because it's just blatant lies out. But then blacks are all like, ooh, and everybody else that knows the truth are looking at him like, oh man, y'all got to quit this stuff. It's disgusting. But it's all they've got. Here she is with her red hair. So what they end up want to push out in the Chicago Sun-Times and other of these Afrocentric type catering to or pandering things is that a rapist and a slaver who did other things is what somehow Jefferson was. He talks about touring Monticello 1 year into the George Floyd era. Like now there's an era off of this worthless guy that tried to pass off counterfeit stuff and then ate a whole bunch of drugs that put him out in 10 minutes in front of everybody. But we can't have that narrative, can we? In fact, I think this is whenever he shows about 20 of them back to back. Let's back this up and see if we can see where all these stories came out here. Oh, well, he starts with this one. And yet they acknowledge that the results could not be conclusive. That's crazy. So why would this place, knowing that if they look up the information to be able to write their article, says that it's inclusive, would turn around and call him a slaver, rapist, and all these things? Real disconcerting here. But he can't be excluded, but he can't be conclusively added as. Well, the weird thing is that it kind of comes out after that the closest thing that we got to it is his daft nephew here, the one that used to play the fiddle and hang around the black people in the slave shack a lot. So it's been a false narrative. It's been debunked. It's been torn apart basically off of it, but then you'll still see this lady here trying to propagate things that aren't true whatsoever. And there are a lot more blacks that want to prove, try to prove that they have some connection to one of the founding fathers. You see? You see how that works? Whenever they find that a large percentage of the people whose last name are Jefferson are not hooked up to any Jeffersons whatsoever that ever were in Montecello. But blacks want to believe that they were raping a lady, pulling a train on her while they were writing the Declaration of Independence somehow or something in their mind, whenever that's not true at all. Was she ever raped by anybody? No, it doesn't look like it. She had 6 kids too, but they don't check all 6 of them. He goes into it. So I'd like for y'all to watch this video afterwards, but they go into it and everything, and they just really want to try to pin it on this one out of the 6. The very first one and maybe the last one, but any of the other people, they didn't even try to go down that hill. Well, if they did, they probably found something they didn't want, so they just push those all aside and go, what about these 2? that actually look like they're hooked up to somebody else. Oh, I'm waiting for an Afrocentric to get on this one and go, oh, you're just trying to deny the truth. You're just trying to deny all kinds of things and live some stupid lie. You're being called out on it. If you wanted to try to tout this as having any type of validity or truth to it, what connection does it have to you whatsoever? The answer is none. But they want to connect to that, and even shows in that Afrocentric lady's books that they're looking for a false identity. They're looking to be able to claim something about the founding of America or connections to it somehow, because without it or some other lies, they really can't connect themselves to anything part of it. It's just a side note. It'd surprise you to look up the same idea on the Revolutionary or the Civil War itself and find out that it really wasn't about setting the slaves free. In fact, Lincoln said that if he could do it without doing so, he would, but he had to do it to screw up the South enough to where they could possibly win. Many people died trying to make this all happen, and that was the end of slavery, but they want to have this other idea about how that happened too. It's a big clusterfuck mess. It really is. So all of this was done literally, whenever you read this guy, watch this guy's story, by people trying to discredit him in his past. Somehow trying to take and discredit Jefferson himself. Odd thing here is that even this guy, who was supposed to have been the product of a child of that, they said they were the only children of his by a slave woman. But if you haven't heard, the narrative's grown to where he was humping all of them, and in fact that they said there were slaves all over Montecello and Virginia and stuff. They, next thing you know, made this guy's prowess to where he was running around humping everybody. Any mulatto you can find was from Jefferson. In fact, it looks like a lot of people tried to claim that heritage that aren't even connected whatsoever, just like claiming Indian heritage. So I invite you to take a look at this guy, Leather Apron Club again. Thomas Jefferson did not have children with slaves, to get some clarity on this idea, so at least you'll quit repeating some kind of lie that's being touted. See, it's gotten to the point now to where people are actually touting this, and of course it comes up on Black History Month or Juneteenth, where this Annette Gordon Reed Afrocentric tries to prop it out there. Oh, it's one of those things every year now, like you get to hear, or that you get to hear on Independence Day about the Amerindians or anything else, which everybody's well aware of all the way through this and still fine with, but they want you to have a modern freak out on it. It's past pathetic to see any of this, but they show you these people every year burning flags, and they tell you that Thomas Jefferson's statue had to be removed after complaints that it honored an enslaver because he had slaves. Well, did you know there was a lot of freed blacks in America that had slaves? And the largest, West Virginia slaver of the time was a previously freed black man, and the first black person that was ever legally the property of anybody else was a black man who didn't want to let somebody go after 7 years of a chattel type slavery that was all going on. It's crazy what they try to pull off. But remember when they were trying to yank down all the statues here a couple of years ago and have a freak out over something that, if you just looked into it, really has no truth or basis in fact at all built up on Trump charges, if you will, on the fact that George Floyd died because somebody put a knee on the back of him to hold him right there, just like they've done to hundreds of thousands of people in the military and the police over so many decades. Said he had enough stuff in him to kill a couple of horses, but that wasn't the narrative that I tried to push. and you saw the riots that came out of that, can you imagine if something really did happen? Because they desperately want to fabricate shit out of stuff that never happened. If they ever had something that really happened, it would just be all end all. But didn't Jussie Smollett try that one? Oh, that's a backfire too. But he's not the only one. He was just a famous one who tried it. There's a lot of other guys who have pulled this same idea, and girls and schoolgirls and all kinds of things that have pulled this, oh, racist, and then they look into it and they go, no. In fact, here's a video of you actually writing it on the wall yourself. Or the black guy that had a club that he vandalized. Only when the cops came, all the TVs they supposedly stolen are in the black guy's car there. And then he admitted to it. So crazy that people try to live beyond these narratives and make it all happen. Can you imagine trying to have some little fake lie to live by and to find anything and try to trump it up and build it into something so you can be even madder over a lie? How pathetic. But that's not alone, you know? And they even tell you whenever they took that statue down that he fathered several children with one who he raped, supposedly Sally Hemings. Well, there's never been any sign of rape. In fact, it's inconclusive that even Thomas Jefferson had anything to do with it, and probably looked like that, but they want to list him as a slave-holding pedophile because when she had her first kid, she was like 15 years old. It gained traction last year among the city council's Black, Latino, and Asian caucus. Funny how they call it a caucus when there ain't no Caucasians involved, following the police murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis and the national record. So you can see how that got pushed. And the next thing you know, they take a valiant man, try to smear him, and then yank down his statue. And anybody that ever owned slaves should all have the statues down, or this, that, and the other. Well, let's take down all the statues of black people because they had slaves too. Oh yeah, no more Aunt Jemima, no more this, no more that either. I mean, if you want to try to play this game, it could get real worse. We could put a plaque up about how blacks were selling blacks in every major city, and everybody's got to go take a look at least once a year so they'll shut the stupid shit up, huh? Do we need that? Apparently we do, because they are putting plaques up that have lies all over it, and blacks like to go to Montecello so they can love to hate on a lie. Well, that statue got removed, and they try to put these tags on him somehow that he's a slave-owning pedophile. And this guy is going to continue to go against the lies of the narrative because all of the people that are associated with this, and I'd like for you again to watch his video, 40 minutes long, Leather Apron Club, Thomas Jefferson did not have children with slaves, to see the reality of the situation and what there is to stand on, and see how if you think that it would stand up even in a court of law in any way, shape, or form. In fact, when they did the DNA test on the Maury show or any other show, it'd be like, you are not the father. But they're still touting that he was. In fact, they're trying to take down statues of him after they genetically checked it, and these claims are false and or inconclusive. But in conclusion, it looks like it may have been his nephew. It's the only way that's possible to happen. And then have a kid that's 1/8 black. And so then you look at the guy that's trying to make the claim and he doesn't even look mixed, and you wonder how that retrograded all the way back to the point of him. Isn't that crazy? Most of these claims are. Anyhow, guys, I'm going to get on. Let me know what you think down below. And or go to Leather Apron Club, check out his video, and then put something in his video if you'd like, or come back on my video and go, wow. Let me know if you did not know the truth and reality of this situation and have been taught all your life jealous lie that's supposed to give black people some kind of something that they don't even have anyhow. Peace.